Ew. I wish we had like a background song that like a countdown thing.
Oh, yeah.
And we are live. What's up, guys? Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Tuesdays with Dr. T. So today we have an amazing guest here. Amazing because we have had like a relationship for the past 4 years, I would say. And he was the one person who got me the opportunity to break my own shell and come out of my, shell of being a introvert. And then he introduced me to the world of live shows and things like that. So I am really, really happy for this full circle moment to share our success, because we are Autism Success Academy, with him. And today he's going to share a bunch of really hot financial topics which can really change your life as an autism parent. So are you ready? If you are ready, let's go take a cup of coffee or tea or your favorite beverage, and it's going to be a long one. But every single minute you're going to enjoy, because you're going to love the way Shawn teaches. Okay, so a little bit about Shawn. So Shawn is originally from Minnesota, US. Oh, sorry, St. Thomas, United States, Virgin Islands.
Nice
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. He's father to 7 children. Wow. So you have a special needs child as well, right?
Yes, I do. Yes, my son Elijah, who is 17, was diagnosed on the autism spectrum at the age of 3.
Okay, so Shawn has served as a member of the Autism Parent Advisory Board at Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, which is a really renowned, medical facility, and a volunteer ambassador with Autism Speaks. So just over 5 years ago, he decided to focus a portion of his business on serving other families with members who have special needs. That's such a nice, you to say, like, I don't know, it's respect, pure respect for you, brother.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, so the first thing, I have a bunch of questions, and you guys are also, privy to them. You can ask your financial questions. You can ask anything that, hello, we have got people here already listening to us. So I have you on my Zoom here, which is being aired to our community in Facebook. If you guys have any comment, just questions, please let them know in the comment and we can pass it on to Shawn and he can answer, okay? So let's start with the start. Money mindset. And, the threshold that we allow ourselves, because we were talking about it a while, just before we came in live, right? So it's about the socioeconomic perspective, how you were raised, your culture, sometimes your religion. All of those things have built a financial mindset, a reality, a perceived reality. Like for me, 3 years ago, I did not have the reality that I can be a 6-figure earner. Not possible for me. Never, ever, never possible. But with the money mindset work that I have done and the things that I had to break, the ceilings that I had to break and whatnot, I know firsthand now that money mindset is so important. So why don't we start there and let our people know about it?
Okay, sure. Well, there's a book called The 5 Love Languages by Dr. Oh my gosh, the author escapes me. And I'm the type of person where I feel like that you have to figure that out.
The title is important.
Right. Yes. But now I feel like I have to look it up. Oh yes, by Gary Chapman.
Oh, Gary Chapman.
Okay. Yes. And so the love languages, for those that aren't familiar, it speaks to the manner in which we express and receive love. And so some of those languages include, and I don't remember them all, I'll tell you the truth, but there's, acts of kindness, acts of affection, acts of service, things of that sort.
Acts of
gift,
quality time, like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So you may grow up in a home as a young boy with a father whose way of showing his love is by providing. Will take a bullet for his family, first person to work, last to leave, provides and everything. And you then grow up, and that is a good chance that becomes your love language. meet a
Mhm.
woman, fall in love with her. She grew up in a home where her parents exhibited a fair amount of affection, and that may be the love language. You can fall in love and at some point get to a point where you realize that you're both saying the same thing with speaking two different languages.
Mhm.
And so the same thing applies to the way that we do anything. We are what we eat, and eating is based on what you consume within the mouth, but it's also based on what you consume with the eye. So
Mhm.
there's also just as we have a love language, we have a language with money, so to speak. So you have the person who is the spender, you have a person who's the saver, you have a person who's the investor, um, and there's the person who is maybe sometimes referred to as cheap as opposed to frugal. And
Yeah.
and how you're raised, or the language or relationship with money that your parents have, has everything to do with what you think of that. If a person is um there are certain religions where people will speak of the
Poverty being
right.
virtuous.
Right. Well, what you have, especially over the last couple of years, you've got some entities where they will speak of um, uh, state that whether it is Islam or Christianity, they will say your creator
Mhm.
created you to prosper. There
Yeah.
isn't anything that's virtuous about having less,
Mhm.
and that's a little different because there's been more history where people from a very religious standpoint believe the former as opposed to the latter. In other words, the belief is that there's something shameful about having money.
Money.
But
Mhm.
I've heard it said that money
Root
is
of all evil.
yeah, well, yeah, that's the root of all evil. But I've also heard it said that money is energy.
It,
That's why they
it
call it
is.
currency.
Yeah,
You know,
it
because
is.
what happens is if you're a good person, you're going to do good things with money. If you're a bad person, you're probably going to do bad things with it. What money will do, or a lot of it, is just shine a spotlight on more of who you really are, and probably have been all along. You
So
know,
for us, let's say
mhm,
I'm somebody who not yet open to idealizing, that I have a money mindset. So for that
mhm.
person, how can you say, like, how can they come to the, light that, oh, the reason why I'm choosing to buy X instead of buying Y is because
Mhm.
of my money mindset? How can they open up their eyes?
Well, the first thing to do is raise our consciousness. And it's funny because when you talk about money and being a financial professional and everything, you think of um, certain financial concepts or products or things like that. But what we think about is what we become, and it's everything, everything. It rules every aspect of our lives. And so
Mhm.
the first thing that a person needs to do is, and I don't like that. It's funny, in the age of personal development and gurus and things like that, I've always
Yeah.
said that if I achieve, however you measure success, by followers in social media, income, whatever have you, status, if I as achieve as much as one could possibly achieve, I want for my mindset to always be as it is now, which is here's what I've learned, here's what's worked for me. Let me share this information with you. So I try to very cautiously say, here's what you need to do. I don't like to do that. But
Yeah.
what serves one in any area is raising our consciousness, thinking about what we think about. So in most cases, we don't do that. So we don't have critical thinking. We're more reactionary than anything else. I know there's times where everybody can relate to at least one occasion where you left the destination in your car, especially if
Mhm.
it's work, someplace you go to every day. Maybe not as much now after the pandemic, but if you physically drive someplace every day, you pull into your driveway, into your parking spot in your apartment um, complex or condominium, or on the street in front of your home, and there's a certain part of you that is not clear on how you got there, meaning that it's so automated. You didn't run any red lights or stop signs, but the route is something that's so automatic that you do that unconscious. And the same thing takes place with the way that we go through life in terms of how we react to certain things. And so when we start thinking about, well, how do I feel about this? How do I usually operate? What am I thinking about? Being able to step outside yourselves and just for a minute. It said that Albert Einstein used to say that we can't solve a problem at the same level of consciousness at which it
That
occurs.
created it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you look
Totally.
at, I don't know, let's say this piece of paper right here, right? Say this is you. The problem is right there in the middle. And if you're in the middle with it, it's more difficult for the average person to solve it. So you need perspective from somebody that's standing outside of that circle or the square, whatever it might be, or, which is even more rare, for you to be able to step outside yourself and take a look and then be able to add, truth. Because you mentioned earlier something about perspective, and I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially perspective is truth. There's the truth, and then there's our truth.
Perceived
And
truth. What I
yes,
think of is as truth. Yeah.
and that matters much more so than almost anything else. So when it comes to that, just like for instance, talk about eating healthy, right? Most people do you really stop to think about what you eat? Do you stop to think about what you put inside you, whether it's in your mouth or your brain? Not always. It's very automatic. So if we stop and think about what we think about, then we get to realize what the relationship with money is like. What do you really think about it? And if you know that, then you can, those are the first steps towards having the mindset in terms of what you were talking about, having a positive, money mindset. And then once you realize how you see it, the question is then, how do you view it? How do you view having a lot of it? What would you do if you had a lot of it? What are the type of things that would bring you fulfillment in life? Because here's the thing, money's not the most important thing. The most precious things on the planet are both time and people. People first, and time has its value only because it is tied to how much of it we have to be with the ones that we love. And we're never going to be as young as we were when this conversation began. So we need to be very wise about all those things. And the amount of money that we have can play a great role in how much of those two things we have. Time and the amount of it with the people that we love, and then the type of contributions that we want to make. And I don't mean just writing a check, but being able to have
That quality time.
freedom of
with
choice.
others.
Yes.
Yeah.
And freedom of choice, because there's something to be said for how you feel if you write a check to a charitable organization of your choice, of which you're passionate. There's also something to be said if you give an organization or an individual your time as opposed to your money. And how much money you have dictates how much time you have to give. You get to sit back and make choices. So some people don't ever even necessarily think of those things. And, they feel that the implication is that, things matter more than people, and so it doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Yeah. It doesn't really be a bad thing until you accept that it's not a bad thing. Because as I was saying to you, my father would take me through the upper class, and then he would say, like, this people, they have this car, they have this flashy home, is because they're forcing, money from poor people and whatnot. So
They
I
stole from
was like,
someone.
yeah, stealing, and
Yeah.
then pushing, maybe killing people, and then smuggling and all of those things. And I was like, oh my God, it's like a generational curse. And the weird thing is, the reason why rich people gets rich and poor people gets poor, it's only mindset, nothing else.
Yeah,
Inflation
exactly.
doesn't matter. Alhamdulillah, now after 3 years, I can say I'm so confident, alhamdulillah, I don't take it smallly. Okay, so I am confident that if there is inflation, if there is a war, I can still survive, because I am not dependent on a system like a paycheck, someone else to tell me what to do. Because I have this cool Christian friend of mine, and we sometimes discuss her religion and my religion, and we both have come to this conclusion that both our religion, actually, they are saying the same thing. They're saying the same thing, that when you have how to say, the way that we earn money, it's also implicating on how much blessing that money has. Okay. And doing business has more blessing than just being someone's employee. But we
Right,
have been
right.
brainwashed from school to be good employees,
Yes.
to be
Hmm.
good. So follow the rules, do these things, and get good grades. Then you will get a good job, and then you will go into this, this system. I get angry sometimes. This
Hmm.
system that has been built, and we take it very comfortably, like, oh, this is just normal. So when somebody says that you have to stand away from your reality and
Hmm.
assess what I have been doing so far, what's not working for me, how can I improve? Okay.
Right.
So on that note, on improving, let's talk a little bit about the money responsibility
Hmm.
that we have, because we think it's the government's job to give us subsidy, give, show me the terms, extra money, benefits, and then maybe
Hmm.
the doctors, they have to give us this thing. It's us.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
have a child, I brought the child without asking the government, hey, are you going to pay this benefit if my child is autistic?
Right.
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 It comes from us. Do you agree with that? The
Well,
responsibility comes from us.
most definitely. Well, I feel like a diagnosis also, much like money, can reveal a lot of
Mm-mm.
who you are, because what happens is
Yeah.
any challenge or test deals with that. So there's a thought that you can you can assume the mindset that challenges and misfortunes take place and happen to you,
To
or
you,
they can happen
for
for
you.
you. And what that means is, you know, as important as things are that happen in our lives, what's more important is the value we place upon them and how we react to them. And so what happens is, people are people at the end of the day. And when one receives a diagnosis, whether it's autism or any other um, cognitive delay or quote unquote disability,
Mhm.
how we respond to that has everything to do with what came before. Just like we talk about how your money mindset, love language, and all those kind of things. It's almost like, what is your conflict or challenge language as well. And so
Mm.
when you're faced with any kind of challenge, who you are becomes kind of revealed. And so what happens is, so I always say, we always say that the things that matter to anyone, generally speaking,
Mhm.
are all the things that matter to a special needs parent, just 10 times more so. And it's
Yeah.
almost like there aren't special needs. There might be special accommodations to get the things that your child or loved one needs, but it's
Yeah.
something that everybody needs. Everybody needs the same thing. Everybody needs to be seen, needs to be heard, needs to know that they matter, needs food, clothing, and shelter, needs education. But the manner in which we get those, depending on a diagnosis that we have, um, will vary. But we need sort of the same thing. So how you respond to a diagnosis and everything has everything to do with what took place beforehand. So the same thing takes place. That's why you think within your own community of other families that have members with autism or any other diagnosis, there are those that take a higher level of responsibility and look to solve and create. And there are those that may be closer to a victim mentality. And I'm not judging good, bad, or indifferent. It's just a matter of how we think and how we're raised. And it's funny because I believe, you know, from a spiritual standpoint, not a religious one, that we're here by something greater than ourselves. Depending on on your religion, you may have whatever you call your deity or creator, but my belief is that we're a product of creation, so we're therefore here to create. And every day we create, whether we realize it or not. Each day
Mhm.
that we have, the day is given to us, the sun comes up, it has been created for us. But what we make of that day is just that, what we make of the day. So
Mm.
when it comes to um, earning your dollar, earning your keep, whatever have you, some people are, depending on their environment, have been um, raised to think that, you get a good job, you do as you're
Mhm.
told, whatever have you, you get these benefits that come with that job. Or for some people, as you mentioned, there's benefits that are provided by um, the state or the authorities, whoever that case may be. And there's
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with taking advantage of those things that are available. But what would it mean? And this is again where I think questions are more powerful than statements, as opposed to giving advice. You try to ask a question. What would it mean to be able to create an environment with an abundance mindset where you have more money than you need? You have that which you can share, right? And you're then thriving whether those systems provide what you need or not. You know what I mean? So the question to ask yourself is, what would it mean? Would there be more value in being able to control your destiny? Because we can't control everything, but we can always control how we respond to that which happens to us. Yeah,
definitely. Because when the Ukraine war broke off, our country, I live in Canada, it wasn't really affected, but we did see the repercussion. Prices went up, then the I could not go back to Bangladesh for some reason because all the flights were canceled. I had to pay double the amount to come back from Bangladesh to Canada and all of those things. But yes, if it was 3 years ago, I would have been financially shattered. But now that I have those mindsets, now I am like, okay, this Ukraine war didn't happen to me. This airplane going, fare going crazy isn't happening to me. It's happening for me. So, and it's not limited. Money is not limited because God is not limited, and money is energy. So God is also energy. And these are all just abundant, more than possible. Yeah, I'm not there. I'm not a millionaire yet. Okay. But what I'm saying is it doesn't hurt to feel freedom.
Yeah. And you have to think, when we raise our consciousness, and we think about what we think about, we can also stop and have a conversation with ourselves, which is invaluable, which is, wait a minute, does that thought actually serve me? No, that doesn't mean that if there's disaster or calamity facing you, you treat it as though it's a unicorn and rainbows, right?
I'm not talking about that as well.
Right? But you operate from objective reality. In other words, if we were to operate in just quote unquote reality, and we mentioned that reality, perception is reality, then we wouldn't have the technology that we're using to communicate right now, because there's no reason from a logical standpoint as to why it should exist if you go back far enough, right? To take a little box like this where you push some numbers, it sends a signal to the sky, and then it comes back down to earth, and you can speak to someone anywhere on the planet. Once upon a time, it's like, wait a minute, why should that exist? But if that is possible, then what else isn't? And again, questions are more powerful than statements. So if we ask, like, well, what if? Just to ask that, you know what I mean, in terms of what we're capable of, and what we can do and what we can become. And I know for a lot of people that sounds very, well, you don't understand my situation. That sounds very altruistic, very corny, whatever have you. But it's this is real stuff. And I'm not talking about that which I've mastered. I'm simply talking about that which I know has served me and continues to, provided that I use it. And I, like everyone else, has a battle that takes place before me every day. There's a life that I have, that I'm living. There's the one that I seek. And those two things are always fighting. And the one that you have is right in front of you. The one that you seek is in between your ears. But if your reason for wanting that, or the vision itself, is not clear, the one in front of you is easier to see. And that one is always going to win the fight, unless you are clear on what you want and why you want it. And that has everything to do with whether it's a goal or money or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. I usually say to people, like, if you want something, you will find a way. If not, you will find an excuse. And it often explodes in their face and they get angry. It's a thing, like, sometimes what our parents or we think is, when somebody is giving us advice, it's because they don't understand what I'm going through. They don't know what I know. So that's the limited mindset. That's not the growth mindset. That's the fixed mindset.
Right.
And that's the exact mindset which has created the problem that we have. Because if I believe earning more is bad, then I'm not going to earn more. I'm going to stay poor. So I'm going to stay broke. And so I'm going to having a lot of anger towards those who have more. And so I'll go to them and then I'm like, you have more. So you have to give me, like a socialist perspective thing. And then the person who has really worked, like maybe shattered herself or himself and rebuild. And then that person is, look at you. I was like you 5, 10, 15, 3 years ago. But I took the diagnosis or the problem as an opportunity to build on it.
Right.
Whereas you took that as a victim mentality and you are feeling oppressed. Actually, we are not oppressed until we allow someone else to oppress us.
Right. Exactly. Like we can't, like I said, we can't control everything that takes place, but we can control how we react to it. But we can also control more than we think.
Yeah.
You know,
Definitely.
we overestimate what we can do, and we underestimate what we can do, and we overestimate what we cannot.
Yeah. And also we underestimate what we can do in one day. Maybe saving $5 a day. Oh, how far am I gonna go $5 a day? You know, that's underestimation. And we overestimate how much we can save, you know, in 1 month. So let's say I have a financial goal. So we're going to be talking a little bit about, you know, budgeting and how to reach there. So let's say I have, my son needs something, $500 US. So I have a notion that, okay, if I, you know, save $10, it will take me 50 days to get that thing. Okay.
Right.
So I might have this fixed mindset like, oh, $10 is not a big deal. Let's just not save the $10. Let's buy a McDonald's meal for him because he'll be happy with that. And I'll find a job. I'll find something to do with it. And that sort of going on. And at the end of the 50 days, you don't have the $500 because of the choices that you made.
Right.
Not because of inflation, not because of government, not because of rich people slaughtering poor people. It's because I could not make the choice. So for those parents, okay, what are your advice to, you know, stop putting the foot in the mouth?
Well, the first thing with anything is the longest journey began with a single step. So crossing the line to get to whatever a goal is there's several things involved. The first thing is to be clear on exactly what it is you want. I don't think most people most of us aren't. Like even when, if you don't think money is a bad thing and you want to earn a certain amount because you there's certain things that you want, choices for your family, comfort and things of that sort. When you ask people, okay, so what is it that you want out of? I don't want to worry about money. Well, one, they're usually certain about what they don't want. Okay, I understand you don't want to worry about money. What does that mean? Well, I'd like to be wealthy. All right. What does that mean? How much money? Well, I don't know. What do you want? What does a life look like exactly? What does a perfect life look like for you? What does a perfect day look like? What does a perfect afternoon look like? If you're not clear on those things and you don't have specificity, then your thought is very random and in generalities, and then so too will your results be. So the first thing is to be very clear on exactly what it is that you want, and then, as elementary as it might seem, exactly why. Exactly why is it important? What is it that'll take place if that doesn't happen? Because the other thing is, like you were saying earlier, if you really want something to take place, you'll find a way. If you think about a person who is has an addiction of some kind, substance abuse, right? There are people that don't, have jobs or don't have reliable sources of income that still get the drugs that they need. So are you telling me that someone who has this insatiable craving for something which could kill them and will harm them, they're more determined to get that than you are to get something that could be good for you, whether it's money or
money.
health, whatever the case might be, so we usually get what we're really truly asking for, and whether we realize that we're asking for it or not has nothing to do with the situation.
Let me
and
write it
again,
down.
yeah,
Oh my God. We get
we usually
exactly
we
what we
usually
truly think we deserve, right?
yeah, we get what we're asking for, even if we don't realize that we're asking. Now, again, if you raise consciousness and you think about what you're thinking about, you realize that's when you realize what you're asking for. And what you ask
Mhm.
for intentionally out loud from a conscious standpoint has a certain amount of power, obviously.
Yeah.
But what really has power is so it's because it's one thing for something to come out of your mouth and you're not aware of it. You're not even paying attention to it.
Mm-mm.
What's really sneaky and powerful is the thought that doesn't become verbalized. In other words, like, what do you say to yourself? You're like, oh my gosh, that always happens to me. Now, it's one thing if
Yeah.
you say it out loud,
Yeah.
you can catch it. But if you say that in the back of your mind and it doesn't come out, right? Then it has even more power because it's such a natural part of you. And again, that's what you're asking for. So if we get what it is that we ask for. There's another
Mhm.
book I'd like to recommend. Again, I shouldn't even recommend. This is something that has helped me. It's a book by an author by the name of Dr. Shad Helmstetter. It's called What to Say When You're Talking to Yourself.
Mm. What to say when you are talking to yourself.
Yeah, because whether we realize it or not, we're always talking to ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's verbal, sometimes it's mental. And the ones that are mental, that when it's just because you're talking to yourself by moving your lips, you're also
Mm-hmm.
talking to yourself by just having these thoughts.
Yeah.
What conversations are we having with ourselves? And those things are so natural that we don't even realize what we say. So there's a great exercise in terms of just stopping to think about what we think about, and maybe you're able to write it down. Because when you do that, then you can also literally change your
Journaling.
thought. You can
Mm-hmm.
catch yourself in the middle of one of those thoughts and go, wait a minute, that doesn't serve me,
Yeah.
and change the direction.
Yeah. Even like 20 years ago, even before I came into understanding all of this belief rewiring and thought processing and whatnot, I used to do this. Like if I'm going through a particular painful period in my life and something sneaks up, I would say like block. I would mentally visualize the word block in all reds, all caps, and it's like, stop. It's not
Mm-hmm.
helping me. Being
That's
up,
huge.
depressed. It
That's
really works a lot.
huge. That's huge. And then depending on a diagnosis and your dynamic, I happen to be part of a great team in my marriage with my wife.
Alhamdulillah.
So
Yeah.
I have support there. If you're um if you're single as a parent,
Mhm.
if the intellectual disability is considerable, the child is nonverbal and needs like constant care, and whatever the case might be it
Mhm.
autism or any other diagnosis, doing all these things that we talked about is going to be a little bit more of a challenge because there's more of you that's needed. But just like any other challenge that we have, once we come through it, right?
Mhm.
And that's not to say that the diagnosis goes away, but once you have
System
a,
to
a
do
system
the
to deal with
best.
that, and
Mhm.
whatever your new normal is, and you develop a high sense of gratitude, and you look at things that are happening for you as opposed to you, those types of things,
Mhm.
anything you come through, there's a gift because you're facing something that you thought you wouldn't be able to get through, and then you're able to ask yourself, well, what else might I be able to do
Do now.
that I thought I couldn't.
Yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally. So, as a finance expert, we have some questions for you. Okay. So the
Okay.
first thing is, what are
Mhm.
the top 5 financial asset building or investment or, just decisions that
Mhm.
every autism parents need to do or take?
Well, what I'd like to do is create a financial checklist, so to speak. So I won't,
Mhm.
not here to give specific, which I'm sure you understand, financial advice in terms of investments and options and things of that sort.
No,
But
not too
partially,
deep. It's just like enough knowledge so that, because we don't want to overwhelm our people because they're already
Mhm.
overwhelmed. Just
Right.
enough knowledge so it gives like a thought, like, okay. So for
Okay.
example, let me give an example which will be clarifying this thing. So
Mhm.
2 days ago, I was listening to this podcast, Business Made Simple by Donald Miller. Highly recommend if you are
Mhm.
somebody who's doing business, or you want to grow your
Mhm.
career and whatnot. So he said that all business should have 5 accounts. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So he went through and divided how to get them. And so I decided that I'll go to my institution and then do it. I went there. And then when I went there, that's
Mm-hmm.
when I had more opportunity to learn about tax-free savings account. So
Yes.
each
Mm-hmm.
government has like a set limit. Like for me, it's 38,000 Canadian. I can save without paying tax to the government. I was like, wow, I wouldn't have known about it if I
Mm-hmm.
didn't took the effort to come to the bank and ask what are my options.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, so I'll go through the checklist.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So the first thing that these are things that apply to anybody, but especially to those of us who have families with special needs. So I'll touch on
Mhm.
the checklist and examples of what those things would be. So the first thing that one should look at is cash flow, right? So in other
Cash
words,
flow.
what do you have coming in? Most people will stop to think, well, I need to make more money, so I'm going to get another job. What people thought once upon a time is, let me go back to school. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do, but the best reason to go back to school to further education is if there's a profession that is going to fulfill you spiritually, like
Yeah.
it's something you really want to do. There's other opportunities where someone will do a quote unquote side hustle, whether you're
Mm-mm.
driving Uber or Uber Eats or food delivery or something like that to fill a gap. Or maybe again, getting back to the passion, maybe there's a business that one wants to start, something that they've always wanted to do that would bring them a sense of fulfillment, right?
Mhm.
So there's the increase of cash flow. The
Mhm.
next thing is then on the financial checkbook should be the addressing of debt.
Mm.
In other words, there's quote unquote good debt and bad debt. Like for
Yeah.
instance, each person's situation is different, but the investment of a home property that could become an asset and be leveraged to grow other things. Whether you're um, doing a refinance, if the property value has come up and you're going to pull money out of it for in a responsible manner, or leverage
Mhm.
it to purchase another property to as an investment. How you do that depends on the information you have with your advisor.
Mhm.
And then the next thing is then protection. Protection is usually just a euphemism talking about life insurance. Life insurance is
Mhm.
as misunderstood as it is valuable, and there's usually what I like to say is um, a wasted argument that takes place where people will argue, like, what's the best form of life insurance, term or permanent? Because those are two umbrellas under which life insurance falls. Term is temporary, so if it's for a period of 10 to 30 years. And because it's term,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
premiums tend to be less per month. Permanent life insurance usually has an opportunity to accumulate and grow cash within the policy. And permanent or cash value policies at one point in time had a very bad reputation. So there's some people that aren't aware that over the last 20 years, or maybe just even a little more, those things have become exceptional in terms of their what they provide. Now, to
Mhm.
answer the question, if anybody is ever asking, what's the best type of policy to get, a term or permanent? The best policy, the best type of life insurance to have is the one that is in force and active the day that you die. Number one. number
Mm.
two, number two is the one that suits your budget and then your needs. And then that goes back to education, because most people will think, well, there's only one need. Life insurance is so
Mm.
your family doesn't have to have a GoFundMe or a car wash or raise funds when you pass away. Yes, but life insurance policies also have great living benefits. There are some, very few, but some term policies that have living benefits similar to long-term care, where you have access to cash if you're not able to perform certain acts of daily living because you're injured or sick, like clothing yourself, bathing yourself, feeding yourself, things of that sort. But then going back to the permanent policies, they have the opportunity to grow money inside of the policy without any loss due to market volatility, but then also being able to access those funds that grow tax free. Now, depending on the state or country that one is in, those things have to be put together in a very responsible way so that if you're receiving benefits,
Mhm.
whether it's Social Security as we have in the United States, or um, IHSS in home services, you don't want those things affected. So you want to make sure that it's structured in a way that won't affect that. But if it's done correctly, there's funds that one has access to later on in life. You can, create it and structure it so that it's done that way. What a lot of wealthy people do is they have those things and they create their own pension, so to speak. So you're putting money into that, and you essentially turn on the distribution later on where it ends up being tax free. The other thing that takes place in the United States, I'm not sure if they have it in Canada, is an ABLE account. ABLE stands for, I'm going to butcher the acronym, but it's affording a better life. And I forget what the E stands for. Because it used to be here in the United States where that if you had an amount over, I think it was $2,000 in a savings account of any kind, that your Social Security benefits would then be affected. It would either minimize those benefits or wipe them out altogether. And what that does is it promotes a scarcity mindset, because what a person decides is, look, I can't earn over a certain amount of money, or I'm going to lose the monthly benefits I get from the government. And so it conditions one, you know. So the ABLE account was created where there's a considerable amount more that you can put into the account without it affecting the benefits. It's administered at the state level. So each situation is different, but there's some states that require you obviously to live in that state to have an account in that state, but there's some states for which you do not have to be a resident. So each situation is different. So you want to do your homework and figure out which one is the best to your advantage. But the other thing with the ABLE account is, let's say you don't have life insurance for a loved one who has a disability. There's money being put into the ABLE account, and after a certain amount of years, God forbid that loved one passes away. If you take money out of that ABLE account to pay for final expenses, the state can come back to recoup whatever is then left in that account now that that person has passed on. So with that said, what I'm saying is the accounts have their value, but they should work in concert with other things, including life insurance, that is appropriately put together and structured. The next thing is then having some form of asset accumulation as far as the checklist
or
goes.
investment.
Right. That means, when we think about accumulation, like you mentioned a bank earlier, the banking system, generally speaking, serves the bank more than it does the public. The average rate of return, if it, you know, in a product that a bank offers, is going to be significantly lower than inflation. What that means then is that, you know, you're essentially walking around with a hole in your pocket, right? So in terms of your asset accumulation, money should be growing someplace that can actually outpace inflation and keep up with it. We saw how inflation changed during COVID. We also know that, you know, when we were kids, what a gallon of milk or a stick of butter, you know, cost then, it doesn't cost now, that, you know, it continues to rise. So wherever the asset is, it should be accumulating where it keeps up with inflation so that it doesn't lose value. How much we earn is impossible. Is important. How much we keep is even more important. But then how much we're accumulating in terms of the growth, that matters as well. Okay. And then the next thing is then an emergency fund. And that means having 3 to 6 months of your expenses put aside in the case of an emergency. For some people, that might seem like a very difficult thing to do. But going back to your point about saving $5 a day, in the beginning, in terms of saving anything, habit is more important than the amount, because you can always increase the amount, but that's never going to happen if the habit doesn't begin.
Exactly.
Right. And then the last thing is then estate preservation. That means having an estate plan, whether it's a will, trust, or a special needs trust, whatever the component might be. And the way that I operate is that we help families put together this entire checklist to meet each one of these things, so that each one of them is in place to combat whatever it is that may be taking place. And with the last thing, with the estate plan, so I work with a law firm that I refer for that particular item. When it comes to the debt management, there are companies that I work with that I refer to that deal with student loans, credit card, or tax debt. And then my area of more hands-on is with the retirement and life insurance pieces. But when you think of estate planning, for one, people will think, oh, having an estate, having a will or a trust, that's something for wealthy people. But if you don't have a plan for your money, regardless of how much you make, who do you think does have a plan for that money? And that's the government. So that means that and I know from experience because my I had an uncle that left some property to my brother and some cousins of mine when he passed away, and he had a will. He did not have a trust, and it had to go through probate, and that lasted for 10 years.
Oh yeah.
Probate can last anywhere from months to years, and what happens is a will can be contested. A trust is a little more ironclad, and so I and again, while I'm not an attorney, this is just basic information that anybody can look up, but I essentially like to, the analogy I think of is that a will is a whisper from the grave. A trust is a little bit more of a
Slap.
yell. Yes, it's more definitive, because let's say you have a will and you put it in place, and you're leaving things to your family, your husband, your children. If someone from your past or anyone period says, well, wait a minute, Tasmiwa told me that she was going to leave what she had to me, that has to go through court and has to be heard out. And then in order to defend your wishes, whatever money is left there is used for that. There's less to go to your loved ones. Whereas if there's a trust in place, that's more difficult to challenge. So, and then with special needs component, the special needs trust, there's a special needs trust with other caveats and things that would apply. And a lot of those things depends on a person's situation. So the way that I operate is that I sit down with people, give them some education, do a needs analysis. What do you have coming in? What do you have going out? Let's determine what you have at the end of the month. What do you want to accomplish? When do you want to accomplish it? Don't charge any fee for the consultation. And then we schedule a second appointment to come back to make the recommendation to address the things that are important to them. And what a person wants is as important as what they need. Sometimes I'll sit down with a client, and there's certain things that they may need, and I can see that from a financial standpoint. But what's most important is what they want. What are they going to respond to? And so you have to work together in order to get to whatever the goal might be.
Yeah, thank you so much. So let's just recap on what you have said so far. Okay.
Mhm.
So the first thing that in the financial checklist, there are like 6 components that all special needs parents must keep in their mind. The first thing is cash flow, as in how much I'm earning and how can I increase the amount that I'm earning.
Mhm.
The second piece of thing that we need to focus on is debt, getting rid of debt. There is a good debt and there is a bad debt. And if I may add, to remove the debts that is accumulating the highest interest. So
Interest,
credit
yes.
cards and things like that,
Exactly.
So
Mhm.
those we need to get rid first. And then even if it's getting into debt to get an asset is a good debt, because
Right.
that's going to compound over the years and give me more assets in future, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
The third thing that we all need is protection, be it life insurance or an ABLE account. And for that, a person needs to go to their hometown, area, and then those people are going to be more able to say what's
Mhm.
available to them, because every country is different, and we have community members from all over the world. Okay.
Mhm.
So the fourth thing that we have is investment and asset accumulation over
Right.
time.
Mhm.
The fifth one is having an emergency fund for the next 6 months or so, because God forbid something happens, another corona hits, I will be ready for that. Okay.
Mhm.
And the
Yeah.
last thing, which I truly loved, because I have been thinking about it, Shawn, I have been
Mhm.
thinking about it because I have 3 kids. So
Mhm.
that's estate preservation. And according to you, a will is less powerful than a trust. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to set up the trust, because the other day I had a small accident. So there suddenly a guy came in front of her, and we had to do a heartbreak. And then it
Mhm.
got me thinking, like, if I had died, who would have taken care of my kids? And
Mhm.
then who would have taken care of my students?
Right.
Those who have already paid, but they did not complete the thing with me. And I'm like, oh my God, I have
Mhm.
so many responsibilities
Yeah.
that I need to figure things out and then settle all of those things, so that nobody is left without a support system that they needed from
Exactly.
me.
Mhm. Yeah.
So thank you so much for this checklist. Now, so far, as a recap of our today's episode, we have talked about money mindset and increasing our threshold by being more conscious. And then we have talked about some of the money responsibilities that we as special needs parent need to make or take daily basis and whatnot. Okay. Then we have also spoken a little bit about budgeting and how to
Right.
get things done, getting the money, doing extra hustle, or maybe mindset wise changing things. We also learned about inflation and how to stay financially grounded. We both described, shared our own perspectives and whatnot. And the last thing that we have gleaned from you is the financial checklist. Thank you so much. That was one of the best, I would say, one of the best interview that I have taken in recent years, because this is going to be changing people's life.
Oh, that means so much. I sure hope so.
Yeah, inshallah. So if people wants to learn more, where can they find you? If they can work with you, what's the opportunities? Share a little bit about that.
I'm putting that in the chat right now. On Instagram, you can find me at I am Shawn Francis. Let me see. Hold on a second. Just and so my name, which is spelled in a variety of options with how to spell it. Mine is SHAWN. So it's I am Shawn Francis, SHAWN FRANCIS. And then my email is contact.shawnfrancis@gmail.com. And they can
so let me copy and share it with our viewers here. So it's shared in the thread, and I will also leave links. So do you only work with people who are in the States, or you can help others as well?
I can help others as well in Canada. So the US and Canada primarily. That's those are the primary areas. Yes.
Mashallah. But still we have learned a lot which we could use. And thank you so much for waking up so early in the morning and to be on time. We are very grateful. We are very grateful.
Thank you, as am I. Thank you so very much. Bless you.
Do you have any last thoughts for us?
No, just one. The one thing I would add is so that's my personal information, but our podcast that I co-host with my good friend Brian Altunian is Just Two Dads, and so you can find that on our YouTube channel. It's Just Two Dads, JUST and then TWO, dads, DADS. Our email is wearejusttwodads@gmail.com. And then you can get the podcast episodes on our YouTube channel or wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, Pandora, wherever maybe, as well as AM radio in the US Virgin Islands.
I just shared that with our people here, Just Two Dads, and I have been there 3 years ago.
Yes, and we're gonna have you back. Gosh, it goes by fast.
Inshallah. We are gonna come, and then we are gonna share all that it takes for you can share financial success and I can share autism success.
There you go. Most definitely.
Thank you so much again. We'll see you soon, and maybe we'll have a part 2 where we can deep dive in some more of these things that we have loved so much. Maybe the financial checklist, go a little deeper for our US and Canada based people so that they know what they can get from you and your amazing opportunities that you have. Thank you so much for coming. So we are taking it off from you guys. If you have any questions for me or Shawn, please let us know. I will bring him back, inshallah, for a part 2, and then we can have a chat again. Thank you so much. God bless. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.